and I hope we have time for one or two of these. Often decentralized web and blockchain discussions focus on cryptocurrency, and I think when people typically think of that, they're often thinking of like arbitrage and financial kind of like schemes related to cryptocurrency. So this question is asking the panelists to discuss some non-crypto examples of real-lived positive impacts of DWeb, DAO, blockchain technology that we can see today. And I think we've heard a bunch of that from folks, but I wonder if we could just take a few minutes to like make that real in terms of use cases. I think you just started doing that, Richard, in a big way. But yeah, let's start with you and then we'll go down.
Yeah, middleware, as it is generally talked about, does not require any use of crypto or blockchain, but that is an enabling technology that could be used to make middleware more effective. So it's sort of, I think the high-level concept is agnostic as to that lower-level technology. So and there was something else, but I'll get back to it.
Great. Yeah.
Well, I'll give a good example. So right now, I'm sure a lot of you have heard about the carbon markets and how we're supposed to be buying all of these tokens that we don't know, or not tokens or whatever, credits. Oh, sorry, I'm using the wrong terms, for carbon, because we're trying to fix our problem that we have a little too much use of these things in the world. So, but we've also know that they're not believable, right? We've seen the reports. People say they're growing trees. Well, they're growing spindly little trees. They're not sequestering any carbon, and they're not really worth, even the processing we're going through on it. The thing is there are ways to do this. Valid data, you need chains of control and validity going all the way from source to the people who are using it. And a good example of this is there's a project right now that's it's an early stage project, and I think I want to talk about it a little bit because it's a great example of how policy and emerging tech really work well together. Up in Canada, there's a project called Quixala. It is they are on using native forest lands to create sequestering of carbon, and what they did was they had to first go to the government and spend 2 years changing the policy to allow them not only to have rights to extract, but to have rights to conserve. That was the starting point, because that is the beginning of the asset on a balance sheet. And you can't keep an extraction right if you don't log. And this is true for many forests, by the way. So you have all these rights to do something with land that could be a carbon sink, but that you can't actually do it because you have logging rights that have to be managed. So first they changed the policy. So now you have the option to have extraction or preservation of the natural forest. So that now that they have that, they've got investment into that, and they're actually tokenizing to be able to create an ongoing regenerative carbon token that can actually be backed. But then you have the secondary issue, which is proof. So what do? You put sensors throughout your forest. You actually go to the source. Those sensors need to work in remote areas. They need to be able to be cryptographically signed so that the data that they're gathering, whether it's the soil, whether it's pictures of the environment, whether it's the secondary positive effects like having more wildlife diversity that we're looking for, all of those things need to be captured. They need to be signed into something that can be then validated all the way through essentially a value flow up to the point where the token is being generated, and the token, from the purchase of your token, you can actually come back and see it. This is what's possible with distributed technology. You can't do this with a centralized tech, because you can't actually keep those sensors signing as agents from the point of entry into the flow. This is true for every form of supply chain that we do today. We need to be using distributed tech in supply chains. We need to be having proof come through these supply chains, because that's going to be the way that we meet regulatory demand, but it's also the way we meet consumer demand.
I'll give you one more example. I love that example. We are thinking a lot about communications in space. And another technology that was built developed at Protocol Labs and is now open source, decentralized, peer-to-peer, anyone can build with it, is called IPFS, which stands for Interplanetary File System. And they started working on this a decade ago, and it's finally in use today in space. So we are working with Lockheed Martin Space to put IPFS into space. So what does that mean? It means the way the current internet is architected, when you're trying to pull information from a server, you have to have, your computer sends out like an HTTP message, it goes to a central server, it retrieves that information. That system is not going to work as we move into outer space because the delays are going to be astronomical. So IPFS, Interplanetary File System, addresses content by what it is, not where it is, not go to this server, but give me a copy of this document that I'm looking for. And that is a much more scalable alternative for communication in space. So a very exciting project, that's something that we love talking about, that makes me personally excited, is starting to build this communications infrastructure in space. So we successfully tested this technology in November, where we sent information back and forth between satellites and Earth using IPFS, and it worked. And we're sort of excited to see where that goes as we see more in DC and beyond, you're seeing more organizations like focus up rather than